Well, hello, my name's Nathan Tibbits. I'm the head of the maths department, and I'm just going to be explaining a little bit about how the ATAR system works, how students' scores are calculated, and just a bit of information that might help students to decide their subjects for the next 2 years. So the ATAR stands for Australian Tertiary Admissions Rank, and the score that students get as their ATAR gives an indication of their ranking compared to other students in Australia, and is not the score that they've necessarily achieved within their assessments. So for example, an ATAR of 70 would indicate that the student was better than 30% of the other students in the state. An ATAR of 98.5 doesn't necessarily mean that they were achieving 98% on their assessments, but rather that they were in the top 1.5% of students for their achievement. So students will be required to select ATAR English as well as another set of 5 subjects that they will choose. At the end of year 12, the students will have their achievement scores for those subjects, but in terms of determining their ATAR, only the top 4 are selected. You may notice that while this student has done 6 subjects, only 4 were selected, and of course English wasn't one of them. However, most or many universities would require a student to pass English. So even though it wasn't one of their top 4, they still meet that competency of passing English, and therefore they have direct access or entry into university. And it doesn't matter that it wasn't one of their top 4, so long as they've actually passed the course. So the question many students ask is, why pick 6 subjects when they're only going to use 4? And there's 2 good answers to that. The first one is that many students in year 10 may have an idea of their strengths and passions, but when they go into those specific ATAR courses, some of those change a little bit over the course of year 11 and 12. So you want a bit of freedom to be able to drop a subject at a later point if need be. Second of all, in some cases, the achievement of perhaps your 3rd and 4th best subject or 5th best subject might be very close to each other, and you really don't know how you're going to go in that final exam at the end of year 12. So having 5 or 6 subjects just ensures that you've got a better chance of getting your best ATAR. Students also need to be aware of the minimum university entry requirements. So as an example, most universities in Perth would require a minimum ATAR of around 70, meaning they need to be in the top 30% of year 12 students. However, for UWA, the minimum entry is usually 80. And so students hoping to go to UWA would need achievement that is within the top 20% of year 12 students. That being said, there are specific course requirements within those universities that you would want to be looking into over the course of year 10 and I guess even year 11 and 12 as well. So here are some examples on the screen of various courses. These scores were retrieved from the university website a while back, but they do change all the time as well based on demand. So if you have a particular course in mind, you would want to be checking that regularly or closer to the end of year 12 just to be sure that you're on track for your goal. I'm just going to be referring to some of those specific cutoffs to give you an indication of what sort of achievement would actually give you an ATAR of 70 or an ATAR of 98. So an ATAR of 70 would typically mean you're averaging about 55% in your top 4 subjects. And as we go through this list here, we'll see that for example, medicine through the Broadway system would require you to have an ATAR of 96. And this means you're averaging about 77% on your top 4 subjects. Now, some of those percentages might seem a little bit lower than you would have thought, but you also need to bear in mind that those are the scores that you would need after scaling. So subjects are adjusted for difficulty, and if you are in an easier subject, your raw score will be scaled down somewhat. And those numbers on the screen will be what you need to achieve after scaling. So for example, if you take ATAR applications, typically that subject is scaled down about 5%. So if your goal is to get 55% minimum entry and you're using applications as one of your subjects, you would need to get about 60% overall, so that after that 5% scaling, you have the 55 target. In the same way for medicine, if you were hoping for that 77, but you're taking a range of subjects that get scaled down, they would need to be closer to 82% on average, so that after scaling, you have the 77 target. So you should start speaking to the teachers of the subjects that you are considering enrolling in, and perhaps ask them what the average scaling is. The other thing that you'd want to be considering is what specific course requirements are necessary for the university course you're looking at. And lastly, be mindful that South Coast is a part of the Broadway program, as we're in the Peel region. And so this means that you have the benefit of a bonus that may be applied to your ATAR course in certain instances. For example, medicine normally requires closer to an ATAR of 98, but when we're a part of the Broadway system, the allocation there is that you only need about 96. Some example course requirements is occupational therapy and physiotherapy usually require you to take one science course. This means that even if you've achieved the overall scores that are required to get into physiotherapy, if you haven't done one of those prerequisites, you may not be able to get directly into the course. Medicine at many universities require ATAR chemistry to be achieved, and engineering has quite a few prerequisites as well. Now, a prerequisite means you need to take the course and you need to pass it. But again, it doesn't have to be one of the top 4, just needs to achieve a pass to meet that prerequisite. So thanks for listening. If you have any questions, you're welcome to ask me. Otherwise, you can speak to the relevant teachers of the ATAR subjects. Thanks.